Chapter 5. Poisons and Curatives. Every ninja was an accomplished pharmacist, skilled in preparing different poisons and special powders and compounds. His training in Yagen pharmacy also allowed him to prepare gunpowder and explosives, medicines, and even concentrated, dehydrated foods for use on long missions. Poisons were made from mineral, plant, and animal sources. They were potent enough to kill, but could be weakened so that they only put the enemy to sleep, paralyzed him, or made him shake with laughter. Dirks, darts, and arrows were tipped with poison for assassinations. Poisons were mixed with food and drink, and even poisoned flowers were used. Curatives and medicines were concocted from herbs and shochu, unrefined sake, among other things. One of the strangest poisons was based on Japanese green tea, called gyokuro. Its recipe sounds like something from an old wives' tale. The brewed green tea was put in a canteen and buried for 30 to 40 days, then mixed in miso shiro, soybean paste used in making miso soup, Japanese tea or water, and given to the victim. Usually designed for sick people, it quickly took effect on them after it was drunk. Although it was potent enough to kill them in a couple of days, it could even make a healthy man take sick after a month or so and eventually die in about 70 days. A more effective poison called Zagarashi Yaku made use of a green plum or peach. It made both it was made both as a solid as well as a powder and was mixed with food. Since it had an immediate fatal effect, it was often used at banquets to kill off many persons at the same time. Ooh. Other poisonous ingredients used by the scheming ninja, according to Okuse, included the green rust, patina, from copper, arsenic, lychori radiate, a type of autumn flower, buttercup, and wolfbane. Swords, spears, and daggers were sometimes tipped with horse dung and blood, just as the Viet Cong even today use excrement to tip their bamboo spikes in jungle foot and body traps. Ooh, I did not know that. A person cut by a blade tipped in horse dung and blood developed an infection almost immediately, leading to lockjaw and finally death. Witch's brew. The ninja were probably the first inventors of poison gas, although it was used more as an anesthetic to put victims to sleep than to kill them. Although this one sounds like something concocted by the three witches in Macbeth, it was apparently effective. The blood of a newt, mole, and a snake were mixed, then absorbed by paper. When the paper was set on fire, it gave off fumes guaranteed to put the enemy to sleep. Ninja used it in bedrooms for putting the victim into a deep sleep. The ninja also tossed some of the magic paper into a stove of glowing charcoal in the guardhouse to make the guards drowsy and fall asleep. Even more weird was the following recipe for sending ninja victims off to the land of Nod. The powder of three male rats, several leaves of the paulownia tree, one fat centipede, a handful of cotton seeds, several scoops of yellow cattle dung. This poisonous mess was compressed into a ball and dried, then the powder scraped off the ball was burnt. Anyone inhaling the fumes slipped off to sleep. Liquid sleep potions were also devised by the busy ninja. One involved taking hemp leaves, drying them in the shade, and then grinding them into a powder. A liquid was made from the powder and mixed with light Japanese green tea. Something of the effect of these sleeping and numbing potions can be understood from Shakespeare's description of one that Friar Lawrence gives to Juliet. Oh, okay. And this distilled liquor drink thou of, when presently through all thy veins shall run a cold and drowsy humour, for no pulse shall keep his native progress, but surcease. No warmth, no breath shall testify thou livest. The roses in thy lips and cheeks shall fade to paly ashes, the eyes windows fall. Like death when she shuts up the day of life, each part deprived of supple government, shall stiff and stark and cold appear like death, and this in the borrowed likeness of shrunk death thou shalt continue 42 hours, and then awake as from a pleasant sleep. Thus it can readily be assumed that similar potions to put a man to sleep were well known in Europe, virtually contemporaneous with their use by a Japanese ninja, for the bard's lifetime parallels the final golden and twilight years of the ninja, from 1564 to 1616. Some of the ingredients of poisons used by ninja to numb their victims are or bring on temporary paralysis include the body fluid from the projection over the eyes of a toad and the liquid from the guts of a blowfish or globefish. The potency of the blowfish liquid as a poison can be attested to by the fact that more than 100 persons die in Japan every year from eating raw blowfish or sashimi. If the fish has not been properly cleaned, the poisonous liquid penetrates the flesh, which is then eaten by the unsuspecting gourmet. Blowfish restaurants are strictly regulated by the government, and accidents occur only when the amateurs try to clean the fish. The ninja never missed a trick, even being prepared at times to harass his enemy with itching poisons. This was usually nettle thorn powder and was scattered on his neck. Although it wasn't fatal, it still caused a maddening itch down the back of the victim. Laughing gas used to be a popular anesthesia with dentists a few decades ago, but the ninja had brewed a mixture that produced the same effect hundreds of years before. They took what is called a laughing mushroom, shredded it, and mixed it with the food. When the enemy took a few bites of it, he erupted into a laughing fit that left him weak and helpless to resist whatever else might follow. One of the most terrifying poisons was designed to drive the victim mad. But since there is still danger that the recipe might fall into the wrong hands, it remains a closely guarded secret. Even today, only a handful of men, including Okuse, know how it was made. At any rate, 5 to 10 seeds of an unspecified plant were taken, ground into a powder, and mixed with food. Few hours after it had been consumed, the enemy slowly but surely became temporarily insane. There are many plants today that are commonly recognized as poisonous. These include poison ivy and poison oak, hemlock, poison sumac, belladonna, henbane, strychnos, etc. The best way for a ninja to stay alive was to remain anonymous, to disguise himself when he ventured abroad during the day, and make himself as elusive as possible on night missions. It therefore stands to reason that he couldn't drag himself to the nearest doctor whenever he was wounded or sick for fear of being identified, and thus compromising his mission. Of necessity, then, the ninja learned how to doctor his own wounds and devise his own remedies and cures. For sword wounds, he mixed an herb root called goosefoot with a plant named black cowpea in equal quantities, charred it, and then painted it on the wound. Or he might spread mashed narcissus roots on the sword wound. Bamboo cuts were treated by pasting wheat flour mixed with water on the wound, especially to relieve the pain. Mashed leeks were used on gunshot wounds. To stop the flow of blood from nail cuts and scratches, the ninja used the smoke from slow-burning rags. To relieve the pain from scaldings, he painted a mixture of tannin and India ink on the wound. A more complex remedy for stopping the flow of blood was to mix the powder of dried paulownia leaves with the leaves of the Japanese tea plant mashed by the teeth. This was then put on the bleeding wound. Since a ninja's life was full of danger, it is not surprising that he was occasionally wounded by enemy swords, spears, arrows, knives, staves, etc. At the same time, he was sometimes injured accidentally by making a hurried escape. He might fall while trying to scale a wall, slip against a jagged rock in attempting to elude pursuers, scratch his face on the thorns, or cut an arm on a sharp branch, and so on. A plant called Philodendron amarense was used for sprains and contusions. Half of the quantity to be used was mashed, and the other half left it in its raw state. Both were mixed with vinegar and painted on the sprain or contusion. If a wound became infected and there was danger of lockjaw developing, the cure was to take the skin of a loach or mudfish and paste it on the infected part, changing to a new piece of skin often. This was also effective in treating Rose's disease. Fighting fire with fire. In cases of food poisoning, the remedy was amazingly simple. If the ninja suffered from bonito poisoning, for instance, he would eat charred bonito. If he were poisoned by eating boar, he ate charred boar. This principle is used by modern medicine today in treating such ailments as snake bite with an antidote made of poison from the same snake. And vaccines are usually made up of the same virus which they are trying to prevent. The ninja even had a remedy for cancer. A piece of an old trunk of wisteria, especially a lump growing on the trunk, was ground into a powder, then mixed with water and drunk. Other cancer cures consisted of taking 5 grains of water-nut seed powder every day with water. The seeds of water chestnuts or water caltrops were sometimes substituted for water-nut seeds. Here again, the lump on the wisteria trunk is a kind of plant cancer, so that the same principle of using fire to fight fire was applied in this case too. When a ninja went out on a long mission, he had to take along emergency rations, a sort of feudal age K rations. On a 10-day trip, for example, he might pack his pouch with the following energy foods: 30 parts of bleached rice, 5 parts of wheat flour, 30 parts of dried bonito, 30 parts of dried trout, 30 parts of dried plum, and 30 parts of powder made from the tender part of pine. Other protein-rich foods the ninja subsisted on included tofu, a soft curd made of soybeans and still a popular part of the Japanese diet today. A small bamboo section might be used to carry the genmai juice made of unpolished rice. Another energy-producing food was tsune no mitsu, made from umeboshi, or Japanese plum. So, mitsu at this point I'm thinking is water, or soup. It was carried in raw bamboo, or soy. It was carried in raw bamboo, which produced a sort of vitamin-creating chemical reaction. Typical thirst quenchers on the ninja's list were peppermint powder, arrowroot starch, and salted plum, all mixed together into a powder and made into a ball. 3 grains a day are expected to quench the ninja's thirst when a ready supply of water was not available. Another trick was to bite a leek and paint the juice in the nostrils. 30 sesame seeds were also supposed to temporarily relieve thirst. Blinding powders of throwing into an enemy's eyes included ordinary pepper, sand, and ashes, as well as poisons from minerals, animals, insects, and plants. The liquid poison used in ninja water guns consisted of iron powder and a mixture used to stain black the teeth of married women. Fortunately, some of the recipes have survived for many of the medicines, curatives, and energy foods, and undoubtedly are still used in some parts of Japan. This is especially so since the popularity of herb and folk medicines, including Chinese medicine, has recently been revived.